Welcome, everyone, to the first roundtable of a series of roundtables specific to MAPP 3D, the new system design tool launched last month for designing sound systems in 3D. So today, as I said, is going to be the first of a series of four MAPP 3D roundtables, which is all about having a dialogue about MAPP 3D. We're all users, and we want to help each other moving forward with operating and using this program in our daily routines. So at the beginning of every roundtable, we are going to show you some tips and tricks, which then hopefully will spark a conversation. And I cannot do that alone. And that's the reason why on any of these roundtables, there will be at least two fellow Meyer Sound colleagues to assist me in answering whatever questions you might have. And collectively, we will try to answer your questions to the best of our abilities. Being the first of a series of roundtables, we feel obliged to tell a little bit about the background of MAPP and how we got here, how we ended up releasing MAPP 3D. We also want to direct you to the most valuable support resource, which is the MAPP 3D Help website, which is a treasure trove of everything regarding MAPP 3D. So that's the primary channel for help, and we want to make sure that you know how to find it. Despite our best efforts, you might have features that you would like to see implemented in the application, or you might, however unlikely, encounter a bug. And we would also like to familiarize you with how to report those features as well as bugs. And then, being the first of four or more, that remains to be seen, we want to give you a general overview of the main graphical user interface and the viewports that allow us to see our model space using different camera angles. We want to familiarize you with that. And then a very hot topic, which is how do I import my computer-aided drawing, such as AutoCAD drawings and SketchUp drawings? How do I import those into MAPP? How do I prepare them for successful import into MAPP 3D? Those are things that we would like to discuss today. So let's look a little bit at the background of MAPP. The development of MAPP basically started with the building of the anechoic chamber in 95. So in 95, Meyer Sound started building their own anechoic chamber. And here you see a very old vintage CGI clip of that anechoic chamber. So we're entering the anechoic chamber, the door is about to slam behind us, and the camera is about to pivot around. And what we see there is known as the positioner, which is the device that we use to pivot our loudspeaker as we obtain, as we capture, as we acquire our measurement data. And all of that happens in the anechoic chamber built in 95. Now, with the access to the anechoic chamber, John Meyer started to measure a lot of loudspeakers, and that produced huge amounts of information that were then consolidated into the prototype of MAPP, which used to be Meyer Polar 2D. But before we are going to look at that, I want to tell you a little bit more about the positioner because I'm running ahead of myself. So here we see a photo of the positioner. Notice that there is a loudspeaker or device under test mounted to what is known as the positioner arm, which is this L-shaped piece of the positioner. The positioner is operated by two servo motors. There is a servo motor at the base of the positioner arm, and there is a servo motor living behind the U-bracket that keeps the device under test in place. And in the previous animation, you could see how that works. That means that we're not orbiting the loudspeaker using our measurement microphone, but it is the microphone that is stationary, and we're pivoting the loudspeaker, and we do this deliberately to reduce the number of measurement errors. And historically, MAPP used to be two-dimensional, and that means that we had high-resolution data, 1-degree angular resolution, and that means that in one drawing plane, in one dimension, a single loudspeaker directivity file would consist of 360 measurement points in the horizontal plane, and of course 360 measurement points in the vertical plane at 48 points per octave. That means for the entire audible band, which is about 10 octaves, you're looking at roughly 480 data points. And that high resolution data, there we go, now I get to say it, that high resolution data was then consolidated into what was the prototype of MAPP, which is Meyer Polar 2D, beginning in 96 and in black and white. And what it would show you in near real time is loudspeaker interaction and frequency response for whatever point in the sound field the crosshairs, the cursor lives. So notice that the cursor at this point is living in a power valley, and that is related to the comb filter that we see in the frequency response. This was the prototype of MAPP. And it was not much later that in 98, this evolved into the first publicly available version of MAPP, which was known as MAPP Online, launched in 98. And at the time, it was the world's most trusted prediction tool, and it revolutioned sound system design, in particular, for example, the use of directional subwoofer arrays, because suddenly we could see the distribution of energy through space in a two-dimensional slice. And that accuracy has really been a benchmark, is a benchmark, set the standard for the high-resolution data that one can attain with carefully crafted prediction software. Because of the huge number crunching that is involved to attain said accuracy, you need an internet connection. This is historically 1998. And to make the predictions, a patented client-server method was required to connect your MAPP-XT or at the time MAPP Online client software running locally on your computer and have it connect with the MAPP servers that would do the heavy number crunching. And this is still being used for MAPP-XT, but with MAPP 3D, as you're well aware, this is no longer the case. MAPP 3D runs locally on your computer and does the calculations locally on your computer. No more internet required. That being said, at the turn of the millennium, a lot of time and energy was put into empirically proving, confirming, validating the high resolution data, the accuracy that we obtain in-house. And several documents were published at the time showing that field measurements shown in in blue in this picture, and map predictions shown in red in this picture for more than half of the audible band are in very good agreement. And that led to MAP being a standard when it comes to accuracy and precision. And we hope to continue that legacy with MAP 3D. That being said, time hasn't stand still. Already in 2001, which is 3 years after the launch of MAPP Online, research commenced into 3D modeling. And here you see one of the very early results that were shown at the Plaza Trade Show at the time, which is known as an isopressure balloon of the UPL in that particular instance. And we've never stopped looking into the pursuit of 3D modeling software. And that brings us to the present. Development of Meyer Sound MAPP 3D began in 2015, in 2015. And we needed new ways to measure our reference loudspeakers, and the development of those methods began in 2017. And internally, Meyer Sound has been using MAPP 3D since early 2019, more specifically by Meyer Sound's design services department. Now, when you add the third dimension, you need to rescan all your reference loudspeakers. And we do that using multi-channel polar scans of every loudspeaker using calibrated noise. And that means that when we capture such a polar file, also known as POL file, that at first the raw data exceeds 80 gigabyte. And it requires 8-hour automated process to gather that data. And then we apply post-processing, and upon successful conclusion of the post-processing, each finalized POL file is about 135 megabytes. And this is the information that you download first time when you use the application if you want to add loudspeakers to your inventory, which are not present out of the gate as you use MAPP 3D for the first time. Now, just to put things into perspective, a finished pole file consists of the same 1 degree accuracy that we've come to expect from MAPP Online and MAPP XT, which is two-dimensional. But now we don't have two-dimensional slices, a plan view and a section view. Now we have 1 degree angular resolution over the entire sphere. And that means that suddenly you're looking at roughly 65,000 measurement points, each captured at a frequency resolution of 48 points per octave. Now, just for your information, this graphic that you see on the right-hand side only shows 2,000 points. So it's an insane amount of resolution if you compare the 2,000 shown on the right side to the 65,000 measurement points that are contained within your finished pole file that you download using the application. And that pretty much concludes the short background history of MAPP3D and how we got here. And before we go to the next chapter, Steve and Josh, did I forget to mention anything? Is there anything that we should add at this point?
Is this the best time to talk about needing to download the loudspeaker data separately from the application?
Right. So I'm happy to quickly stop sharing my screen.
And Merlin, while you're getting that prepped,
Sure.
So what Merlin's about to show, what Merlin's about to show is the loudspeaker data library. This means that as we add more speakers throughout our vast inventory of over 30 years, 40 years of products, you don't have to update the application, and all you simply have to do is check for updates via the MAPP3D web, MAPP3D application as Merlin's showing you here. So as we make more speakers and put them in MAPP3D, they will be added. And so constantly, just every once in a while, check for updates within your MAPP3D application.
And not just loudspeakers, also the rigging hardware is subject to change. So currently I'm trying to update the application. I went to help in the main menu bar, and then I went to update, and notice that here in loudspeaker data, it shows all the current available models that are there for you to use in MAPP3D. Notice that everywhere it says no action required. I get the check mark, which means that I'm in good condition. That being said, for example, over here, VLFC, there is an instance which would require an update, and that means that I get to choose update or remove at my discretion. Could also be that the rigging is updated. This would be the rigging for all loudspeakers. So you have separate files for each loudspeaker, but the rigging is contained within the same file. And again, there might be the need for you to update it, in which case you see this little round angle, or you might want to add a loudspeaker, or you might want to remove a loudspeaker, whatever your needs require. So you will find that under help and then check for updates. And that's how you add more pole files to your inventory. So let's go back to the keynote and talk a little bit about the primary support channel, which is the MAPP3D help website. So there are several ways how you can go to the MAPP3D help site. There is an internet address that you see in the bottom left corner, or alternatively from within the application, all that I have to do is go to help and then go to MAPP3D help, which will open up a browser and take you to the same page. And we encourage everyone, if you haven't done so already, we encourage everyone to visit this page, because a huge effort was put into trying to capture all the necessary steps to get you up and running with MAPP3D from start to finish. So be sure to visit that wonderful website. It has animated graphics showing you routine procedures such as adding geometry, modifying geometry, and whatnot. So be sure to visit that website. And that means that in the next topic, we would like to talk a little bit about how you can submit any requests that you might have for new features, or however likely report any bugs. In order to do so, we would like you to visit the contact page at the Meyersound website, which is meyersound.com/contact. And when you visit that page, you will notice that there are several fields for you to populate. There is sales, technical support, software support, and service. And since this relates to MAPP 3D, be sure to check the radio button next to software support. Then we would like you to inform us what product you are inquiring about. And obviously, being MAPP 3D, this is the product that you want to make an inquiry about. And then the next drop down menu asks you to inform us whether it's a feature request or whether it's a bug report. It's pretty self-explanatory. If you want to request a feature, please include a brief title and a description of the feature and why you think it's valuable. Whereas if it's a bug report, then please include a brief title and the steps to reproduce the issue. And please provide as many information regarding your operating system and other application versions. And the error or the bug that you observed, the expected result and the observed result. And that way we can collect that information into our systems and take care of the feature or a bug that you're reporting. This is also where we would like you to let us know if there is a particular loudspeaker that you feel is mission critical and should go into MAPP 3D sooner than later. If you want additional loudspeakers featured in MAPP 3D, that would be a feature request, and be sure to send us that request using the same form. Again, Josh and Steve, before we move forward, anything you would like to add to the feature request and bug report at this point?
Absolutely. So this is your gateway into talking directly to the product managers and developers of MAPP 3D. We do look at every single feature request, but our product managers may not implement them, but do understand that. But as this is sort of like just a gateway for you to really get in contact and tell us what you think. And for feature requests, you don't need to put one feature request for every single feature that you need. You can make multiple feature requests in one document. But for bug reports, the more detail we have, the better. And for bug reports, we do ask that they are individually made. That way, it's easier for our developers to track and work on these issues. The more information we have, the easier it is for the developers to get to cracking on some of these bugs that you are experiencing.
Excellent. Thank you, Josh. So on that note, let's start with a brief overview of the main graphical user interface. So the philosophy behind MAPP 3D is that there's basically four major areas. There is the center pane, which has the most real estate of the application, and in the center pane, it's where we see our model view. That being said, on the left pane, we have our inventory and express setting tabs, where inventory can consist of geometry, which could be 2D shapes and 3D solids, and as well as your imported CAD drawings. Then there's signal processors, such as your Galaxy devices, loudspeaker systems, and microphones are all shown in the left pane, as well as express settings that are depending on whatever object you are selecting. Whereas in the right pane, in the top right corner, we have our tools. And most of these are pretty self-explanatory for those that are familiar with AutoCAD, Vectorworks, and SketchUp. There's your selection tool, there's your pan tool, your orbit tool. You can measure distances between 2 points. You can scale, rotate. You can align objects as you would do in Photoshop. For example, you can mirror object, which is very convenient, zoom in and zoom out, zoom to extents, and even do arraying of objects, which could be microphones, loudspeakers, and whatnot. Furthermore, in the right pane, we have the opportunity to introduce geometry. We can introduce two-dimensional shapes, such as squares, circles, and the free draw tool, which we'll discuss during the next roundtable, and also the option to introduce 3D solids, such as the square, cube, the half octagon shown to the right, and the trapezoid. And there's also a modifier tab that allows us to perform Boolean operations on set geometry, such as extrude, trim, offset, union, intersect, and subtract, which we'll intend to discuss during the next roundtable. Furthermore, on the right side, we find our properties. Again, depending on what you are selecting, a loudspeaker or a piece of geometry, you might have properties live on the right side, which allow you to modify, to alter your selection. This is also where we find the layer top. And the layer top is pretty much a carbon copy of what you would expect to see in MAPP, and that means that I can organize my project in layers in a very convenient way. I can assign unique colors to those layers. I can hide those layers, unhide those layers. I can lock them if I'm afraid of accidentally changing something in those layers. And the philosophy is basically what you would expect to see in AutoCAD or in Vectorworks. And finally, in the bottom right corner, we have the controls that allow us to work with our viewports, which is the center pane where we see our model view. We can work with one viewport, as we're about to discover, and multiple viewports, but we'll get to that in a while. Because in the center pane, we see our model. That's what it's all about. And that is the primary top. It's a top-based center pane. The first top is always the model view. We can change the camera angle. We'll talk about that in a while. But there's also a top that allows me to look at the settings of my object. In this case, I see a cube. And of course, a cube has depth, width, and height. And I can change its X, Y, and Z coordinates and start labeling faces and whatnot. But this is also where you would see the properties of a loudspeaker, such as the Ultra X40 that you see over here, where we can see its weight and power consumption, which way it's facing, to what output channel of which galaxy it's assigned, because we have the galaxies within MAPP 3D. So that's where you see your properties. In the next top of that same center pane, we see our processor settings. And this is very familiar to those that are intimate with the Compass control software or with the previous version of MAPP. This is where I see my output processing, my delay integration. This is also where I access my low mid beam control and change my gains and delays. And finally, in that same center pane, we have the fourth top, which is our measurement view, which is consists of two parts. The first part is the frequency and IFFT response, which stands for inverse fast Fourier transform, also interchangeably used with what everybody colloquially refers to as impulse response. So I see my amplitude and my phase and my impulse response. And this is also where we can go to the headroom tab. And the headroom tab shows us the performance metrics. How much SPL am I attaining at a certain point in space? And it will show you A-weighted and C-weighted and Z-weighted, and for several test signals that we will discuss during future roundtables. And then finally, the top pane, which is that strip in the top of the screen. In the top left corner, we have our generator level for, in this case, a pink noise. But using the drop-down menu, I can also set it to B noise or even M noise if I desire to do so. Next to that, we will find our prediction controls, where I can choose the bandwidth that I like to predict, as well as the center frequency for set bandwidth that I would like to predict. And then new to MAPP 3D is some SPL metrics, which shows you the loudest position in a visible and activated audience plane, and the softest position and the difference between those two. So that's a very intuitive way to assess the level uniformity within your design. And finally, in the top right corner, we have our power consumption values, our current draw, depending on the line voltage in your specific corner of the world. Which brings us to viewports. By default, if you open up MAPP, then it starts in a single viewport, and the camera angle defaults to isometric, which is your three-dimensional view. That being said, using the drop-down menu in the top left corner, I can change my camera angle from isometric to a top view or a left view or front view or back view. We will elaborate on that during the next roundtable. That being said, it's not mandatory to work with a single viewport. I can also work with multiple viewports at once. And all I need to do is click on multiple in the bottom right corner where I control my viewports. And suddenly I have my three-dimensional isometric view, as well as a two-dimensional plan view, a section view in the bottom right corner, and a trans-sectional view in the bottom left corner. And it's super intuitive. That concludes the viewports, which brings us to the hot topic of importing CAD and SketchUp drawings. Importing CAD and SketchUp drawings is a very straightforward process, provided the imported drawing complies with certain rules of engagement. We will get to those rules of engagement later, but just to show you how simple this is, let's go to MAPP and import a drawing. So I go to File, I go to Import, and let's start with a DXF first, which would come from example from Vectorworks of AutoCAD. So I go to Drawing, Exchange Format, and that will open up a window. I have a DXF file sitting ready over here. It's called shell example. It needs all rules of engagement, so I'm going to click shell example. I'm going to click open, and that brings up a dialog not unlike what you would expect to see in MAPP, and it requires you to answer what are the incoming units, what are the units of the file that you're importing. Well, in this case, it happens to be inches, which I happen to know. So I'm going to choose inches, but it could also be that your incoming drawing has a unit which is feet, millimeters, centimeters, or meters. Today it happens to be inches. And at this point, all that I have to do is click import, and it gives me a dialog saying that we successfully imported this DXF file, and there you have it. There we have successfully imported a DXF file. If I now go to my layers tab on the right-hand side, notice that besides layer 0, which is always there by default, there's now a second layer called layer 1. It has DXF between parentheses, and this is the layer that contains my DXF file. And I can hide it and I can reveal it. If the DXF file happens to consist of multiple layers, then you would see a nested folder structure living underneath the DXF layer, showing all those layers from your DXF file, including the colors that you assigned to those layers. So you can really color coordinate this to meet your needs. If at any point I have reason to get rid of this DXF, all that I have to do is select that layer. Triple clicking it will highlight it in blue, and then I can delete that layer, and in doing so I will also rid myself of the imported DXF. So that is the DXF file format. That being said, we can also import SketchUp. So let's go to File once more. Let's go to Import, but this time we're not going to import the DXF. This time we're going to import the SketchUp. It's going to be the same file. It's going to be the same venue, if you will. So let's choose SketchUp this time around. And rather than choosing the DXF file, we're going to choose the SKP file. I'm going to say SKP, open. With SketchUp, you do not get to choose the incoming unit because SketchUp works in inches, regardless of your preference. So this defaults to automatic. All that I have to do at this point is click import, and then you will be not able to see the change because this is 2 times the same venue. That being said, notice that at the right side where I have my layer stop, there's now a second layer called layer number 2 with SketchUp between parentheses, and that's my SketchUp layer. So I can have 2 drawings in MAPP3D at the same time, one DXF instance and one SketchUp instance. And I can alternate between them. If I hide the DXF, then all that's left is the SketchUp, whereas if I hide the SketchUp, then I can reveal the DXF or have them there both at the same time. Again, if I want to get rid of any of these, all that I have to do is delete the respective layer, and in doing so, I will get rid of the imported drawing. Assuming that your file complies with the rules of engagement, doing the import is a very straightforward process. That being said, not every drawing out of the gate lends itself to be imported into MAPP3D. Not to mention that many drawings contain entities that are not required for you to figure out how to aim your speakers, which is in the audience and not on the ceiling, not on the plaster. And that means that many entities can be removed from incoming drawings, such as lobby doors and bathrooms and whatnot. We don't need those to point speakers. It is recommended to replace complex entities with simple entities. In this background image, you see a chair, which is rather detailed, but I don't need all that detail to inform me that it's a chair. So it's well advised to replace such a feature-rich model for something similar, such as an elementary square or a rectangle representing a chair. And for best application performance, we encourage you to keep the file size reasonably low, preferably less than 20 megabytes, which is not to say that MAPP3D cannot handle larger files. There are certain DXF entities that you should avoid, such as surfaces, dimensions, 3D solids, polyphase meshes, leaders, hatches, attribute definitions, and blocks that contain any of the above mentioned entities. Because MAPP3D will not render those properly. So you need to eliminate those from your incoming drawings. And then there are certain entities that require conversion, such as splines, polylines, faces, arcs, circles, and ellipses. You need to basically convert these into linear segments. And depending on which program you use, there's several ways how you can do that. There's too many ways, in fact, for us to cover, but these require conversion. So if you are an AutoCAD user and you use the Windows version of AutoCAD, then there's a little piece of software which works really, really well. It's called Curve Segment. And what it allows you to do is select any of your polylines, splines, arcs, ellipses, circles, select them, and then come up with a polyline approximation depending on the number of linear segments that you want to use. And this is super intuitive and will turn everything into line segments if you are using AutoCAD on a Windows machine. Another tried and tested method is to parse your DXF through SketchUp Pro, because SketchUp Pro in the process will eliminate and convert a lot of those entities, and that will increase the successful importation into MAPP 3D. So that is another way of curating your drawings and make them compatible with MAPP 3D. And it's beyond the scope of this particular webinar to inform you how to work in AutoCAD and Vectorworks and SketchUp. That being said, we dedicated an entire webinar to making computer-aided drawing files ready for import into MAPP. And you will find that webinar on our Thinking Sound YouTube channel. So be sure to watch that if you want to learn more about how to prepare your drawings for successful import into MAPP. That being said, you just saw firsthand that if the file meets these rules of engagement, then import is a breeze. That being said, if you really are not making any progress with getting your files in a shape where they're ready for import into MAPP 3D, you can always contact us at your discretion, and we can typically turn over those files in a matter of hours. That pretty much concludes the import of CAD and SketchUp drawings at this point. So before we open up Q&A, Josh and Steve, anything that you would like to add at this point?
Yeah, actually, for Vectorworks users out there, that tool that Merlin just showed there's a similar tool built in to Vectorworks. All you do is go to Modify and then Convert to lines. And typically, what I do with the drawing is just Command A, and that's the first thing I do. I Command A in Vectorworks, go to the Modify window, convert to lines, and that generally most of the time takes care of a lot of the problems within Vectorworks.
That concludes the things that we wanted to show you today, and that leaves us with over 20 minutes where we're more than happy to answer any questions that you might have based on your user experience during the past 2 weeks since the launch of MAPP 3D. So if you would like to pose a question, please use the raise hand feature. We see that Martin wants to ask a question. Or
my question is about layer hiding. I've been having trouble hiding layers. They just don't hide at all. It may be a bug that you guys are working on, but I'm wondering if there's a rule of engagement that I'm not following with an import CAD file document that you guys might know about.
Now, just to be sure, layers in imported CAD drawings or layers in MAPP 3D in general?
In MAPP 3D in general.
If it's about like there's an issue, it's not an issue, but like MAPP doesn't see blocks. So if it's importing a CAD into MAPP, if you assign your block to a layer, it's not going to be hiding in MAPP because it's still seeing that as line. So you need to edit your block, explode everything, and assign everything to that layer that you want to be able to switch on and off.
Can I step in for 2 seconds?
Sure.
Seen that old MAPP grayscale drawing from way back when? If you might find it interesting to know that the first project that ever got data from the original MAPP program was Tokyo Disney Sea. We designed the Med Harbor spacing of the poles based on the original MAPP 2D. That was the first ever project, and I thought you might find that interesting.
I do find that interesting since we spent a lot of time together at that park.
We have one question from Amit. Hi, is it possible to add speaker systems in multiple layers? Yeah, absolutely. You can have different layers of speaker systems. You can assign each object to its own layer and create multiple layers within MAPP 3D.
Shall I make an attempt at showing that?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So
There's one limitation. If you're dealing with an array, the entire array needs to be on the same layer.
yeah,
Yeah.
because
You
that's
can't split an array that way.
right. So Amit, for our understanding, are you talking about distributing the individual elements of an entire array amongst multiple layers, or are you talking about the case that Josh was deferring to, which is have multiple layers containing each one or more systems? So in case of the array, as Steve said, it's ill-advised to try to distribute an array over multiple layers. Does that answer your question, sir? We see that somebody is asking in the chat whether it's possible to import a PDF, and that is a feature request which we have seen multiple times. This is the thing that you need to know. Keep sending us those feature requests, because the more feature requests we get for a particular feature, the more likely it will gain critical mass. So at any time, please continue to submit any features. Because your vote greatly helps in expediting the process. So we have a question from Dominic Diensknecht. He's wondering whether in the future there will be something like a venue library or database.
We didn't talk about it, but if you go to the MAPP 3D landing page on the website, we are starting a brand new form from MAPP 3D, and that will allow users to install and put up their MAPP 3D files and load certain specific files via the MAPP 3D web form. So that will sort of act like a database. There's no official database as of yet, but it's a great feature request, and we do see the need for it, especially once we start all touring again. And but right now you can see everyone has access to the form. You need your Meyer Sound website login to submit in this form. That's a different login from your MAPP login. Yeah, so we have the project showcase within MAPP 3D on the forum that you can upload examples, things you're working on, cool things. There are some security concerns, of course, with posting CAD files of venues and things like that. So be careful. We do moderate this forum, and have fun.
Yeah, we also like this to be a community where people can exchange tips and tricks that help us expedite the process of designing sound systems using MAPP 3D. So we hope that this becomes a very lively community. Guatemoc, a fellow Meyer Sound colleague from Mexico, is coming back to the why sometimes layers don't work or appear not to work, because SketchUp has an equivalent for what are blocks in AutoCAD. In SketchUp language, these are known as components or groups, which is the SketchUp equivalent of blocks. So again, you need to explode those components into individual geometry, and that will increase the success chance of doing those operations. Thomas Lyon is asking when we should expect the next version release.
We don't have a specific date. Product management and development are very tight about that because they don't want to announce something and then and have it not be ready and then get you guys disappointed in everything. So we don't have a specific date. They are actively working on it. What's cool now is we don't have to update MAPP 3D. We can also update just speaker files. So as more speakers get added, we will send it'll be on the Facebook where we announce it, the Meyer Sound users community, and probably our marketing department will announce it as well. So we don't have a specific date, but MAPP 3D updates and speaker updates can now happen at different times, which is really exciting. And it's important, and the feature requests that you guys are putting in are really helping the product managers and developers. So please keep them coming. It's the gates are down, guys. We want to hear from you. You're the end user. We want to make the best product for you and make it an efficient tool for your workflow. And this is version 1, and we can only go up from here. So the more info we have from you, the better.
Thank you, Josh. Sam Zuckerman is asking, will MapXT be continued to be updated, supported? The 2D version is much simpler to teach the students than the 3D program.
It's not going to be developed further. And at some point, we're going to get to a place where operating systems and other applications are going to be problematic. Until then, it continues to work. The server is still online, and feel free to use it. But MAPP 3D will eventually completely replace XT. We just don't know when XT is really going to be. We don't have a date that those servers will be shut down. We're going to leave it operational as long as current computers can still use it.
And next week, in terms of viewports, what we are talking about, we'll show you, using a plain old top view and a section view like you can in MAPP XT. And so we'll show you some ways to deal with your workflow to make that feel very similar.
Right. That's a good point, Josh, which is that MAPP 3D captures the functionality of MAPP 2D, not the other way around. Dominic is asking, is support for Vectorworks files planned in the future? Well, it's my understanding that from Vectorworks, you can go to DXF, and from DXF, you can go into MAPP.
Yeah, you can export DXF. That's what I've been doing for Vectorworks. And it's very easy. I can actually show you guys converting in Vectorworks really quickly if we want to look at that.
While he's doing that, we'll talk about a couple of other things here in the questions. Can we import a project that was built in MAPP 2D or XT or MAPP Online? Not yet. We know that people need to do that. You've got a bunch of existing files if you've been a MAPP user, as all of us probably have been for years and years and years. You've got a lot of old files. Getting those 2D files into MAPP 3D elegantly turns out to be a little tricky. We are working on it, though. It is up there on the list of feature requests. Please go ahead and submit another one. It's just another vote for prioritizing that. Thank you.
Yep. So here we go. I was given a file the other day, and it was like this, and the guy was having trouble with it. So what I did was I opened it up, imported the DXF into Vectorworks. I saw that my actual drawing was way off of where my 0, point is. So what I did was just dragged it over into my sheet layer, popped it in here, and then the next thing you want to do. And this is a 3D file. So let me get my screen out of the way. Oh, zoom. Okay, so yeah, this is a 3D file. So if we look at it in 3D, I basically lined it up sort of at my 0, point. And we can see that it is 3 dimensions. So then all I do is click Command A, and I have everything highlighted. Then I go to Modify up top, and I go to Convert, which is right here. And then I just convert to lines. I chose wireframe rendering. Then I exported the file as a DXF 2013 and imported it directly into MAPP. And that got right in. So that's just a really simple way to convert lines if you are a Vectorworks user.
Thank you for showing that, Josh. We have a question from John Paulson. Does MAPP 3D feature the ability to integrate reflective surfaces in the map? Yes, you get to do that for one surface. Here we go. I'm going to introduce a piece of geometry. Let's introduce a two-dimensional shape. Just going to drop it in there somewhere. Let's zoom to extend. There we have our two-dimensional geometry. Let's give it a name by clicking on it twice, and then let's call this the floor. Now I need to activate this as a prediction in order to see distribution of SPL. And in the object settings, I also need to let MAPP 3D know that this is a ground plane. So let's check that box as well. Let's introduce a loudspeaker. Right-click somewhere in the model view. Let's go to Insert a Loudspeaker System. We're going to use a single speaker. Let's do individual speaker. I'm going to stick with the Ultra X40. Let's give it some height. Let's do 5 meters or so. Press OK. There we have our loudspeaker sitting above our plane. And in order to make you appreciate this, I'm going to draw a cross section. So we're getting way ahead of ourselves, but that's perfectly fine, just to show you how quick this can go. I'm in plan view. I'm going to select my free draw tool, and I'm going to draw a line left to right. I'm going to hit enter. I'm happy with this. I go to the free draw tool. I'm going to make sure that my Y values are nicely zeroed out. I'm going to hit apply. And the next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to make you appreciate this in 3D space. I'm going to change my camera angle to isometric. I'm going to use our first modifier today, which is extrude. Rest assured, all of this we will show in great detail during the next roundtable. I'm going to extrude it. I'm going to give it height along the z-axis 10 meters. I'm going to hit apply. And there is now my section plane. I'm going to rename it section, and I'm going to activate it for prediction as well, so that you can actually see that single specular reflection coming off the floor. The final thing that I need to do is go to edit, and under edit, I need to activate the ground plane prediction. Okay, so if I click on that, notice that it now has a check mark in front of it. If I now were to go to, let's say, 63 hertz and hit predict, now you're going to see what some people refer to as the floor bounce. So now you see that power alley running over the floor, and then next to it you see the power valley, because the mirror image loudspeaker living on the opposite side of the ground plane is late by half a cycle. So you get to do it for a single plane. This was
I would throw
super.
in just that you've now done and created the normal map XT picture.
Right. If we go
That's-
to multiple, then in the top right corner you have your plan view, and in the bottom right corner you have your section view. Can we change the type of signal processor without adding a new one? This would be especially helpful if we could change the default processor when we open the program. We go to tools, and then from tools we go to signal processor management, which brings up the following dialog. And let's see, when we add another processor, whether we get to choose Callistos and Galileos as well.
Ooh la la.
And
They're there. We just can't synchronize to them as
Yeah.
we can with the galaxies.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a big distinction, is we can't crosstalk for them.
which we will show in the third roundtable, which is where we intend to talk about the integration to Compass control software, Compass Go, and the Galaxy devices. Can we assign a layer to that extrude line? Yes, we can. Okay, I'm going to add another layer, and let's call that layer section, and that will contain the section view that I just made. So I'm going to select from my inventory tab, I'm going to select the section that I just made using extrusion. Now I go to object settings, and in object settings, notice that on the right side, I can change the layer. Currently it lives in layer 0, but now I'm going to assign it to the section layer, and you're done. If I now were to hide that layer, then my section plane disappears altogether, whereas the ground plane, which is currently living in layer 0, stays in place.
And Merlin, while you're there, can you just show the double clicking of different things to get them to pop out from the window?
Okay, so I can double click on my modifiers, in which case my modifiers become a floating window. If I double click on it again, it pops back. Same is true for my primitives. By double clicking on the tab, it becomes a floating window, which is useful if you work with multiple displays. If I double click again on it, it pops back. And the same is true also for more advanced topics such as my measurement view. I do not have a microphone, but if I double click on the measurement view tab, then it completely lives in its own window. If I double click on it again, then it goes back to being a member of the center pane. Is that what you had in mind, Josh?
Yeah, that's perfect. So Brent is asking, can you tell me if there's a series of videos that shows how to get started with MAPP 3D? On the Meyer Sound User Community Facebook group, we did post an hour-long getting started with MAPP 3D video. I'm not sure if it's been posted officially on the YouTube page, The other useful videos are on the Thinking Sound YouTube page. Things like importing for MAPP-XT is still very relevant, and most of those MAPP-XT webinars. But the Meyer Sound user community on Facebook, there is a video that has a good getting started with MAPP3D.
And on the homepage of the help, the first links are edited versions of the sneak peek that we did for early access folks.
Right. So let's
little bite-sized chunks.
Right. Let's show that, because that's a valuable source of information. Right here, if you scroll down on the first page, you will find a whole section of clips, as Steve rightfully so pointed out, that show you basic operations, such as adding geometry and modifying it to a certain extent. Sam Zuckerman is stating that he would like to see 4K support, because
Me too.
Yeah, occasionally suffers from a crash. It's a feature request. It's a vote. Please make your vote known in order to.
And it is true on a Windows machine. Go check the drivers for your graphics card, for your video card. There may be an update. I've talked several people through this, that then all of a sudden, once that firmware is updated and your machine is restarted, all of a sudden 4K works just fine.
Yep.
In some cases it does, and in some cases it doesn't.
Yeah, I have a 4K monitor here, and I've been doing both. I haven't had a problem, but I did recently update my Windows graphics card, and it's been smooth ever since. The couple of things that we are seeing, like Steve said, coming in is operating systems. If you're running earlier versions, most of the problems get fixed if you update to Catalina for Mac. And then Windows 10, the graphics card is the big one. And also make sure you're running the latest and greatest version of Windows 10. That seems to eliminate a lot of the crash reports that we seem to get.
We're almost 10 minutes over top of the hour. We intend to keep these roundtables within 1 hour, more or less. And that means that I would like to share some closing remarks about upcoming roundtables. So we intend to have at least 3 more of these every Thursday as of today, which is next week and the week after and the week thereafter at 9 a.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Central European time. And depending on your feedback, we might schedule additional roundtables. It's too early to tell at this point, but the spirit is that we're here to answer any questions that you might have. As far as next week is concerned, these are the topics that we have in mind that we would like to discuss at the beginning of the roundtable, which is how to introduce primitives. You already saw me do that today. How to change the pivot point or reference point or centroid of a particular 2D shape or 3D solid. How to modify those using those Boolean operations that we saw before. And then how to assess SPL in MAPP3D, because attenuation has always been there, including in MAPP Online at the time. But we have a new mode known as SPL, which is an absolute skill. So we need to talk about that. And then some tweaking and optimization strategies to expedite the work process. That's what we have in mind for next week. And that means that I'm asking Josh and Steve, do we have anything else in closing at this point that we would like to bring to our viewership's attention?
Brent is asking, will the roundtables be archived and accessible for future viewing? We are recording this webinar and hopefully roundtable, and hopefully this will be available. Marketing will announce it when it is. Excellent.
Well, on that note, please stay safe, please remain healthy, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks from now, where we're going to pick up the conversation where we left off. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.